All the knowledge of book language and the exercise of the eye was for colloquial purposes, and how complete the success was, both in respect of time and effect, when the means here proposed were used, namely, thorough appropriation of a good stock of simple familiar sentences, and the diligent exercise of the ear and tongue. He was totally without the colloquial use of the language, so that he could neither understand a word spoken nor speak one intelligibly when he began to adopt the means he did, and in 1 month he found himself perfectly at liberty in conversation. In the same memoir it is afterwards related, having had a lesson in France on the occasion of not being able to speak the language of a country in which one is travelling and studying, Dr. Hope guarded against a similar inconvenience in Italy. Before leaving Paris, he improved his pronunciation of Italian by taking 12 lessons, as he had formerly done in French, and he provided himself with a brief practical Italian grammar, with exercises referring to the rules and a key to them. During a tour in Switzerland, it was agreed that he should walk in advance of his friend for an hour daily, to give him an opportunity of practicing these exercises viva voce. This plan answered perfectly. At the end of the time, he spoke Italian fluently. It may perhaps help to show, yet more distinctly, how far the principles here advocated differ from, or agree with, some of the commonly received notions on the subject, if I place my views side by side with those lately advanced in an elementary book for helping the student of an Indian language. The first principle laid down is, don't proceed too quickly. An entirely new language requires great accuracy in the mastering of its elements. In this I agree, but I consider the book itself implies a progress in the learner immeasurably beyond the reality. Second, write down everything from the beginning. Read always with pen or pencil in hand. This is directly opposed to 2 of my principles, one an essential one, the other one of great importance. The first, that everything is to be learnt through the ear, and not through the eye, because it is the ear that is to be employed in using the language, and not the eye. The other, that the foreign character should not be used by the beginner, because time must be saved in learning one thing at a time, and the character is not necessary to enable one to learn the language itself. Third, read aloud all the exercises with a Tamil teacher, and be very careful in ascertaining the correctness of what you have written. Here it is evident that there was some sort of loose notion about the exercise of the tongue, but it also shows that there was nothing like a real apprehension of the essential importance of this, nor to the extent to which that exercise should be carried. Nor is anything at all said about that which I insist upon as the main point, namely, the impossibility of learning to pronounce correctly, and the certainty of being established in a false pronunciation, unless, for some considerable time, no word is pronounced without referring, at the time, to a correct standard, without the student hearing one word at a time pronounced both immediately before and immediately after himself by a native. As to the latter clause of this hint, I urge that the only possible way to secure the correctness of what one learns is not to attempt to invent anything, but to be content to learn everything, every sound, every word, every expression from a native. Fourth, at first, Whenever you meet with a new word, look for it in the vocabulary and decline and conjugate it in full. My rule is, never meet with a new word, and never lose a minute in looking for a word in a vocabulary, or in guessing which of the different meanings that may be there given is the right one, and never lose time in declining and conjugating a word in full. Use only limited lists of words, and thoroughly appropriate every one by hearing it applied in a great variety of short sentences, in the course of which exercises the grammar will necessarily be picked up long before the pronunciation and value and use of the word are fully acquired. Yet it will be of some use to look occasionally into a short grammar containing the inflections of words. Fifth, begin to talk, though with stammering lips, as soon as possible, the very first day. Never speak English to a native if you can help it. Why say salt when you know the word uppu? Do not be afraid of making mistakes. This rule contains the very essence of the ordinary system, or rather of the old notions. It is diametrically opposed to the universally acknowledged and universally applicable principle. Whatever is habitual is easy. It is always easier to do a thing the second time than the first. My principle is, be afraid of one thing, making mistakes. Every time that a mistake is made, one step more is taken towards a confirmed habit of making that mistake. Why do men in talking English as their own language go on putting H's in the wrong places and leaving them out all their lives, in spite of their getting into a different class of society, where they continually hear the correct pronunciation in this respect, without ever being corrected? Because, by habit, their perceptions have been so blunted that they never perceive that they make a mistake. Do we not keep this principle of avoiding mistakes in view in almost all other cases excepting this? Do we set a child to make a rude imitation of some letter and then leave him to repeat it without a standard? Or do we insist upon his incessantly looking at a standard and never making one written letter without trying to imitate that standard which is placed before his eyes? My principle, therefore, is, never attempt to guess at anything, whether it is a sound or word or an expression. Take the most effective steps you can to prevent you ever making a mistake. Is there not enough work to do to learn the real language that you must take measures to oblige yourself to add to it the unlearning of your own mistakes? Every time you pronounce a word wrong, you have that to unlearn. On no account, therefore, attempt to speak in the proper sense of that word till you are established in, first, a sound pronunciation; second, in the knowledge of the true value of a stock of words; third, in that of a good amount of grammar; fourth, in that of a large stock of bona fide native expressions. Is not this principle undeniable? Does a drawing master tell his pupil, go and make rude and absurd drawings of a hand or a foot, and then occupy yourself in unlearning the habit you have been acquiring? Or does he set before his pupil a true representative of a thing, and say, imitate this, with the most earnest and close attention, and never make a line without referring to the standard? Which pupil would make the greatest progress, and which would be most likely to attain to perfection in his study? One who was always trying to make rude drawings of a foot out of his own imagination and then labouring to correct them, or one who